you all for your patience. This is what happens when we all think that somebody else is taking care of that. So, for those of you who may not know me, my name is Sam. I am the Community Engagement Librarian here at the Barrington Area Library. We're excited to have you join us tonight. So, as Community Engagement Librarian, I spend a lot of time out in the community, as one might imagine. One of the things that I hear very often is that a wish for increased civility in our everyday lives. So, in a moment, my community partners, the League of Women Voters, are going to share their guidelines for this forum. In addition to those, the library asks that everyone in attendance adhere to our customer code of conduct, respect one another's rights, and help to maintain the library as a safe and respectful environment. A couple logistical things. If you're new to our building, again, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Restrooms and drinking fountains are out the door to your left, down the little white hallway there. We want you all to be aware that tonight's forum is being recorded. In accordance with that, we do ask that you all make sure that your cell phones are turned off or silenced. Once the recording is available, you will be able to access it from the library's website. I will put it on the listing for today's event. You can go back to the calendar listing to get that link, or the League will be able to pass that along to you. With that said, I am going to pass things off to Vicki Martin with the League of Women Voters. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending this evening's forums. Like Sam said, my name is Vicki Martin, and I'm the forum chairman for the Palatine, Schaumburg, Barrington areas of the League of Women Voters. We also serve Inverness, Hotham Estates, and Rolling Meadows. Founded in 1920, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that neither supports nor endorses or recommends candidates for office. The League was founded here in Chicago over 100 years ago in order to help educate and inform the new female voters who had just won the right to vote. The League's purpose is to promote civic responsibility through the informed and active participation of all citizens. Providing this forum enables members of the community to become better informed about issues facing their community and for the candidates running for office. We're pleased to offer this service for you. Before we go any further, as a way to remind ourselves why we are here, and that regardless of our individual political views, we are all Americans, we would like you to all rise, remove hats if you're wearing them, and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's some general information I'd like to share with all of you. Today's forum will be recorded for the League of Women Voters, use in educating the public. A video of this forum will be available early next week on the League of Women Voters website, the Barrington Area Library website. And all the candidates have agreed to this. It is a League policy that no campaign signs, buttons, or partisan materials are allowed in this room. That is a standard nationwide League of Women Voters policy. I had to ask several people today to please button up their jackets or turn their shirts around, and everyone here cooperated, and I would like to thank you all on behalf of everyone in the room very much for helping us keep this room a neutral space. Where we appreciate your intention to support your candidate and to encourage them, but again, it's our policy that this space be as neutral as possible, so thank each of you. You all know who you are. I very much appreciate your help with that. The League claims copyright ownership of all recordings or transcripts produced from this event, and we reserve the right to publicize this forum. All audience members are hereby advised that their image may appear in the forum video or in photographs of the forum. To view the forum, go to the league website, which is www.lwvpalatinearea.org, or the Barrington Library, where there will be a link. And I believe that Sam is going to send a link to everybody here in the audience, so you can click on it and watch it and share it with your friends or whatever. We want to thank all of you for taking the time to attend this forum. We know you're all busy. You all have to go to work in the morning, or many of you do, and it's a sign of your interest in your community for you to be here today, and we really appreciate it. We ask that out of respect for our fellow attendees and for our candidates, and to help us stay within time limits, please hold your applause until the end of the forum, and no questions will be taken from the floor. No interruptions, heckling, or other disruptions will be allowed. We'd like to extend our sincerest thanks to Sam Adams-Lanham, head of the community engagement team at the Barrington Library, and her library staff who have made today's forum possible. So now I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for today's forum, Lisa Slankard. Lisa is a member of the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, and Buffalo Grove. Lisa's been trained by the League of Women Voters and has moderated many forums, several of them here at this library. So we are very fortunate that she's able to be with us this evening. And here's Lisa. Thank you.
I think it's on. Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. It is my pleasure to be with you this evening to moderate this candidate forum. As a resident of the 54th District, I'm not eligible to vote in this race. So I have been asked to serve as an impartial facilitator for this discussion as a volunteer with the League of Women Voters. Let me take a few minutes to explain the format and the rules for the forum. All of the candidates were contacted by mail, email, or phone and have agreed to abide by the ground rules provided by the League of Women Voters. They are as follows. Candidates have drawn numbers to determine speaking order. I will rotate this order during the questions portion. Each candidate will answer every question. Candidates' answers will be timed by a team of timers trained by the League. They will hold up a sign indicating how much time the speaker has left. Timers, please raise your signs so everyone can see them. Thanks to all our timers for their assistance tonight. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening statement. Next, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer a question. I will repeat the question if necessary, just ask. Candidates will be given a 30-second and a 15-second warning, so please be ready to complete your thoughts, finish your sentence, and yield the floor when you see the stop sign. Time limits will be enforced out of respect for all candidates. If needed, a rebuttal may be requested. Each candidate may use a maximum of 2 rebuttals. Rebuttals will be timed and limited to 30 seconds each. At the end, each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement. Questions have been submitted by audience members at the time of registration and by local civic organizations. Questions have been reviewed for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. We have done our best to ensure that the questions are free of inherent bias. Candidates have been asked not to interrupt one another. Today we will hear from 2 candidates hoping to represent the 51st District in the Illinois House of Representatives. With us today and on the ballot are Nabila Syed and Tassi Ufordike. I want to thank both of you for your participation. We will begin with the 2-minute opening statements. By number draw, candidate Ufordike will go first. You may begin.
Okay, hello. So good evening, everyone. I want to first thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this event in Barrington Area Library. I want to take this time to introduce myself because a lot of you might not know me. My name is Tassi Ufordike. I'm a wife and a mom. I want to thank my husband and daughter for being here. We live in Hawthorne Woods, and I started out, I was born in North Carolina, and my father is a Nigerian immigrant, and my mom is a Southerner. They met, and then I went to Nigeria, came back, relocated to South Carolina. My father was a journalist and a businessman, and my mother was a public school teacher for 40 years, who retired. Grew up in South Carolina, went to college, got my master's. In college, I had the opportunity to join a sorority, and the focus was on voter registration, voter activation, and then I joined GE after college. I was an auditor. I ensured checks and balances. And then after that, we relocated, and I'm a small business owner with my husband. We own a small business, Kitty Academy of Hawthorne Woods. I would love to represent each and every one of you in Springfield. I see as a mom and as a trustee, I'm an elected official, I see just the differences that's going on in Springfield and the need for change. Costs are up. People find it hard to pay their rent. They find it hard to find jobs and to stay in the state, and we need better representation. And I'm here as a public servant, hoping to serve each and every one of you in Springfield, so thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from candidate Syed. You have 2 minutes.
First off, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for having this forum. Hi everyone, my name is Nabila Syed. I am the state representative of the 51st District. I was born and raised in Palatine. I've lived in this district my whole life. I attended the public schools here. This place is my home. And one of the reasons why I ran for office in 2022 was because I believed in the ability for my home, for Illinois, to be an even better state. And Illinois is on the forefront of protecting reproductive rights, taking bold action to promote gun violence prevention and climate change action, paying down our bail backlogs. But unfortunately, there are many people in our community that are struggling. They are struggling to pay their grocery bill and afford their prescriptions. They're watching their savings diminish as property taxes increase, and they're worried about what their retirement might look like. That is why, in my time as state representative, I focused on reducing some of those costs, specifically related to healthcare access and prescription drug affordability. I passed several bills with bipartisan support, many of them coming from constituent concerns. But I will say, what I'm most proud of is the work that we have done beyond Springfield, the work we've done here in the 51st District. We've gotten over $1 million in funding to support local nonprofits here in the community, including an organization that supports people with disabilities, a local food pantry. We got money for an infrastructure project in Deer Park. We passed legislation that addresses fire safety and communication concerns related to the water service outage from Aqua, Illinois. We advocated alongside residents of Killdeer who led the effort to get solar panels on their homes. We have gone head to head with pharma to pass legislation, historic legislation, that bans the price gouging of off-patent and generic drugs. When I say I'm working for the community, I mean it. And I am so proud, in the 2 short years I've been here, we have been working towards addressing very real concerns. And I hope, with another term, we can accomplish even more for the 51st District. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the questions. Remember, you each have 1 minute to answer, and we will start with candidate Syed. The question, what legislation, if any, would you support regarding affordable housing?
Thank you for that question. We actually had the Rebuild Illinois tax credit come up into discussion, not just this past legislative session, but the one prior. And it's a tax credit that I would very much support. This would provide tax credits to developers that are looking to build affordable housing in our communities. And I will say, most recently I was knocking on a door and I came across a gentleman who is disabled, who's in a wheelchair. And he said he can't afford to leave his parents' home. He wants to live independently, but he can't afford to do so. I think we not only need to be making more affordable housing, but we should also be ensuring that we are creating specific affordable housing for people with disabilities in our community. Because frankly, as a young person, I can say it's hard to enter the housing market. It's hard to purchase a home. These areas, the suburbs should be accessible to everyone. But with the cost of living, with property taxes, they unfortunately aren't. I benefited from the great public schools here. I think young families that are looking to move in deserve the right to settle down in our communities, afford to stay here, and I do believe that the Rebuild Illinois tax credit is a great step in helping us accomplish those goals.
Thank you. Candidate Ufer Dike? Same question, sorry.
Oh, no problem. When I think about affordable housing, I think about all the people that, unfortunately, the last administration has increased their costs. Illinois is one of the highest taxes in the nation. We surpassed New Jersey and California, and it's all from spending that is being done in Springfield by this administration. So yes, it's sad to see that housing and different things are hard, but it's because of the administration and the overspending. What I would do is seniors, when I was knocking doors, there was a senior who said she couldn't survive and live in her home. And I think we have to do more for our seniors. We need to have a tax credit for them, and we need to look at the spending that we're doing across the board and make changes. Illinois is a beautiful place. Our district is a beautiful state. But with costs rising, with decisions being made by the current administration in Springfield, people cannot survive.
Thank you. Question number 2, how do you see current immigration impacting local Illinois communities, and what factors should be prioritized when considering legislation to address these impacts? Candidate Ufordike, you're first.
Thank you. Thank you for this question because, like I said earlier, my father was a legal immigrant into America. We all want to help immigrants, but we have to put our citizens in our district first. Right now, Illinois is spending $1 billion with a B on non-citizens. Illinois is a sanctuary city. Governor Pritzker passed that law. My opponent supports it. But we have to look at all the costs. We have current citizens in our district that cannot afford health care. We're spending $750 million on health care. For non-citizens, there should always be a path to come to this beautiful country. America is the greatest country on earth. But every time that we fund something, we have to understand there's a cost. And we, the taxpayers, are the ones that are paying for them.
Thank you. Candidate Syed, same question.
Thank you for that question. I believe the primary focus should be ensuring that our communities and our municipalities have the resources to safely address this situation. But in doing so, we should be demanding that the federal government provide financial resources to handle the situation, and that they, at the federal level, are having significant and sorely overdue immigration reform. What I will say is, it's limited at the state level what we can do about the influx of migrants in our communities. However, we need to be approaching this situation humanely. We should be being diligent with taxpayer dollars, and we should also use facts and speak in informed ways. I will say, the influx of migrants, they are not receiving this health care. They are not. And we should have a shared goal of really genuinely trying to solve this crisis and not make political pawns out of human beings. You know, it costs $221 million to bus the migrants all over the US, $221 million taxpayer dollars. That to me is unacceptable.
Thank you. The next question. Oh, sorry, a rebuttal.
Yeah,
I'll take your rebuttal card.
Yeah, I get one more, right?
You get one more after that. Okay, she has 30 seconds for her rebuttal, okay?
Immigration is so important, but again, I will say it, we do have, as legislators, a big role to play in what happens in our state. We have votes. We can vote whether we agree. There's healthcare costs, there's things to the budget, that we have a say-so. So with immigration, again, nobody's trying to be mean to any immigrant, but we have to have an organized process for bringing immigrants, and we have to make sure that we can afford it. And we cannot afford $750 million in healthcare for non-citizens.
Thank you. Okay, next question. What legislation, if any, would you support to reduce the cost of health care? Candidate Syed.
Thank you for asking this question. Healthcare is a big passion of mine. I passed a bill this past legislative session that expands ACT's insurance coverage for molecular breast imaging, which is specifically for women with dense breast tissue. This was amazing legislation that came from a constituent in the 51st district. She brought the idea to me, and we were able to make it a law. I supported legislation that makes continuous glucose monitors, something my dad uses, and covered by insurance, mandated now. I think when we talk about healthcare, it's important that we are taking practical steps to ensure every single entity that deals with healthcare, whether it's hospitals, or private insurance, or Medicaid, or even federal's Medicare, that they are doing everything that they can to reduce costs and get more people covered. Because frankly, when more people have access to healthcare, it saves our taxpayer dollars. It helps us at the end of the day. So the best the best things that I believe in the state of Illinois we could do is make sure more procedures are covered by healthcare and also expand access to it.
Thank you. Same questions, candidate before DK.
Healthcare costs are something that are near and dear to me especially. I feel that healthcare is a right that every American should have. But again, we have to always look at the cost to it. When we say that we pass bills and we save dollars, we have to look at our healthcare premiums. A lot of times when we do cut costs in different areas, there's premiums that go up. Our citizens bear the brunt of it, and they have a limited choice in what drugs they choose. It's very, very important that healthcare, we really take a bipartisan approach. I've worked with people across the aisle as a trustee, and I'm willing to work again with people when I'm in Springfield. But healthcare is a very, very important cost, and we have to make sure that we are looking at the overall picture of what dollars we spend, where they go, and who they cover.
Thank you. Next question. What actions would you endorse to address the issue of gun violence? Candidate for DK, you're first.
As a mom, you know, we've all seen the horrific acts on television when there's a school shooter. One of the biggest things that I always think about is mental health. We have to make sure that we are doing mental health screenings in the schools. We have to make sure that Cook County Sheriff said there are 27,000 guns that FOIA card has been revoked, but the guns are still out there because either they have a mental health issue or they were arrested for a crime. So one of the things I would do is we gotta make sure we're enforcing the current laws that are on the books. We have to make sure we're giving our law enforcement the tools that they need to do their jobs. And we have to continue to educate and take mental health seriously. I'm a mental health candidate. I support the Second Amendment, but I also support common sense gun safety in our schools.
Thank you. Candidate Syed, same question.
The first school shooter drill I remember was in 3rd grade. When I'm knocking on doors, I met this young man, and his child is going through active shooter drills in daycare. How is that acceptable? And ever since, even before running for office, I have been very passionate about the need for gun violence reform, for gun safety reform. We need to be reducing gun violence, but we actually need to be taking practical steps on this. It's not enough to address mental health, because guns kill. Guns kill people, so I'm a strong supporter of Karina's bill, which would remove firearms from individuals that have a domestic violence order of protection against them. This would protect women and families. I support the military-style assault weapons ban because no one needs to have a military-style assault weapon. And I would much rather a young man with a knife or with his fists enter a school than with an AR-15. Because the damage an AR-15 will do could decimate not just the kids in those schools, but the families of those children.
Thank you. Next question. What environmental legislation would you support that will protect the quality of life that today's young people can expect to have on their 50th birthday? And how would you ensure that this legislation is enforced? We'll start with candidate Syed.
I'll talk about my own 50th birthday. It is a massive issue. Climate change, the climate crisis, it's not coming up. It is here, we are living in it. The headlines that we are seeing about the hurricanes in Florida, it's not a coincidence. It is devastating. We need to be acting urgently to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, which is why I was a proud supporter of a very bipartisan effort to build more small nuclear modular reactors as a means of clean energy production. That's why I support offshore wind production of Lake Michigan. But let's go beyond that. Let's talk about the wetlands. The Supreme Court took away federal protections for wetlands that improve water quality, that provide floodwater storage. It is imperative in the state of Illinois that we pass the Illinois Wetlands Protection Act so that we are taking proactive action as a state, even when our federal government fails to do so. Once again, the climate crisis is here. We should be taking action right now, and bold action to address this issue.
Thank you. Candidate for DK.
Yeah, when I think about climate change, I don't have to look too far because I live in Hawthorne Woods, and there was an issue where they wanted to put a solar farm right 5 minutes from where I live. And this issue was talked about, residents, we spoke up, the mayor spoke up, and we said no, because we didn't know the implications that were gonna, the effect it was gonna have on the people, the residents. We didn't know the effect that it was gonna have on our pets. I have a dog. And so we fought for that, because climate change isn't only thinking about stuff that's on the federal level, it's stuff that happens right in our community. We have to respect our forest preserves, we have to respect the needs of our residents, and we have to make sure we do our due diligence for every time that there's a solar farm or something that wants to come in our backyard. We have to put our people and our residents first.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to, do you believe the primary funding source for public education should be local property taxes? If yes, please explain. If not, what would you legislatively propose to change current funding responsibilities? Candidate for DK?
Thank you for this question. My daughters go to public school, I went to public school, and then we own a school, Kitty Academy of Hawthorne Woods. I do not think property taxes, the increases with all the unfunded mandates should be on should be the sole responsibility of the taxpayers. I believe in local control of education. We cannot, when Springfield has unfunded mandates that they keep passing on, us as taxpayers have to absorb the cost. This is not right. I think with public education, it's one of the biggest things that we have to look at on our budget, but we also have to make sure that we cannot just continue to accept Springfield mandates. If Springfield wants to pass a mandate, they should also have a plan to pay for it and not expect that we can continue to increase our property taxes.
Thank you. Candidate Syed?
I think my opponent will like my answer to this one then. No, I don't think that we should primarily be relying on property taxes. It creates an unfair situation for schools across the state, but it also creates an unfair and an undue burden on senior taxpayers in our district. We should be, at the state level, increasing funding for education. This has been a top priority of mine. We have the evidence-based funding formula, which was in place well before I got elected, but we started most recently adding $350 million every single year to be funding education better at the state level. And what we do when we fund education at a higher level at the state level is we will eventually reduce the reliance on property taxes, so that the seniors that are being forced to move out of their homes because property taxes keep increasing and increasing will finally see some relief. But I will say, I don't think Springfield's doing enough on this. I think we have to be acting even quicker, increasing the amount we put into EBF every single year until those benefits are seen in the 51st district.
Thank you. Next question. Do you believe our current debt to be at a sustainable level? If so, please explain. If not, what should be the government's goal and what legislation would you support to accomplish this? Candidate Syed.
I would say no debt is sustainable. The goal would be to have no debt, and that is something that we should be working towards at a greater level in Springfield. The pension debt remains one of the biggest things that has irked me as a legislator. As a young person, I see decisions that were made 20, 30 years ago where they decided to kick the can down the road. They didn't pay down our pension obligations. They didn't invest in education at the level they should have. And now here we are in the state of Illinois in a very tough predicament for you all and for me and for future generations. But unfortunately, the answer is fortunately, the answer is very simple. We have to manage our money better, and we have to pay down the debt. And through paying down the debt, we will eventually free ourselves from the fiscal issues that this debt creates. I will say, because Illinois has done a better job of paying down their debt in these past 6 years, we have gotten 9 credit upgrades that we haven't seen in over 20 years. When we make good financial decisions, we get good results.
Thank you. Candidate for DK.
Illinois debt, we're headed toward a big cliff, and it's based on policies that this administration continues to spend. They control the House, they control the Senate, they control the governor's office, and they have the majority of legislators, and we still continue to spend. Yes, our pensions are, we have to, number one, respect and honor the obligations we gave to our teachers that live off these pensions. But then going forward, we also have to look at other ways that we can control our spending. When you have a one-party rule and everybody just toes the same party line, unfortunately, things don't get done. And that's why Illinois is the highest taxes, the highest gas tax, income tax, and just people can't afford to live in this state. So yes, it is a disaster, but we have to rein in spending, and we have to look at every line item on the budget, and just like a business, or just like many of you, look at how we can cut costs.
Thank you, and it looks like we have a rebuttal. Candidate side, you have 30 seconds.
It's easy to say that we should just cut spending here and there. You can't tell that to a woman whose child has a developmental disability that has been underfunded in the state for quite a long time. I will tell you, as a legislator in Springfield, I have made difficult decisions because I thought the budget wasn't sustainable. I know we have a transit fiscal cliff coming up. That is why I voted no on the most recent budget, because I didn't think we were being smart enough with our taxpayer dollars. It's not important to me to toe party lines. It is important to me that for future generations, we do what is right now.
Thank you very much. Next question. What programs, if any, that support undocumented immigrants would you vote to fund in the annual budget? And would you include a dollar cap for expenditures in the budget? Candidate for DK, you're first.
Thank you for this question. Our budget, like I said, and I'm glad my opponent agrees, it's headed for a cliff. Immigration and non-citizens, we have to, again, we have vulnerable citizens, we have veterans that don't know how to live, don't know where they're gonna live or what healthcare they're gonna have. We have children. I was in Chicago and there was a sign. It was a mother and her 2 kids. I'm homeless, I'm an American, please help me. So we have to, unfortunately, or fortunately, help our citizens in our district first, period. And we have to look at ways we can stop the bleed of the spending that we're doing right now on undocumented workers in our district.
Thank you. Candidate Syed?
What I would be very supportive of funding is a process that allows for people that have come over to have an intake program and make sure that we are creating pathways for them to work in our communities if they would like to remain in our communities, for them to work, for them to pay taxes, for them to send their kids to public school and then pay the property taxes for the home that they reside in. You know, we as a state are unable to do some of these things because some of this comes from the federal level. But unfortunately, what we do need to reckon with is the fact that our local municipalities here, they're struggling. There are people that are being bussed into our communities from Texas, like political punts, and being dropped off at the Metro train station. What is the Village of Palatine going to do when that happens? It's imperative that the state steps in there too. The state has to make sure that our municipalities, our mayors, our trustees are not being left to bear this brunt alone. And they're able to use dollars wisely within their own communities and determine how they could handle this influx of folks that are coming over.
Thank you. Next question. Would you support amendment or repeal of the Illinois Reproductive Health Act, which became law June 12, 2019, and defines Illinois legal stance on abortion? If yes, explain. Candidate Syed.
No. I support a woman's right to choose. For reproductive health care decisions to be made between a patient and their doctor, and for us, for women to have autonomy over our own bodies. I'm the only candidate in this race endorsed by pro-choice organizations like Personal PAC who are fighting to safeguard this right across our state. Because I will say, when Roe versus Wade was overturned 2 years ago, some states have put in some of the most radical policies that have resulted in women dying, suffering from miscarriages and bleeding out, physicians scared of practicing because they don't know if they'll be arrested for providing care. And it is not enough to say that Illinois is already a safe haven. It's not enough to say that our rights are protected here. We saw how quickly our rights were stripped away from us, and we need to elect candidates who are going to stand up and keep fighting for our reproductive health care rights.
Thank you. Candidate for DK, your turn.
Thank you for this question, because unfortunately my opponent has been sending out mailers that are false lies about my stance on this issue. So I'm glad I'm here so I can address it. I think women are smart enough to make their own decisions about their bodies. I also though think I'm pro-life with exceptions. Rape, life of the mother, and health of the incest. In Illinois, we have 78 Democrats and 38 Republicans. This is the law. This is the law, and I follow the law. Right now, this is the law. So again, I trust women. I have 2 daughters, and I think women have a lot. When I knock doors, they talk about groceries, they talk about the high cost of living, they talk about their kids and their curriculum in their schools. Women's only issue is not abortion. And in Illinois, it is not an issue because this is the law, and I will always follow the law.
Thank you. What legislation would you support to reduce crime? Candidate for DK?
Yes, thank you for that question. Crime is something that, unfortunately, Illinois, we all see the shootings. I talked about the guns, being on the street that haven't been collected. One of the things that we can do with crime is really look at the Safety Act. This act was rushed, and I think there are some parts, like the body cameras on police officers, but there are other parts of the Safety Act that we need to look at. We also need to make sure that our law enforcement is respected and they have the tools that they need to do their jobs. Right now, violent crimes are up 18%. There was a bank robbery, for those that live in Barrington, I'm sure you saw it on the news. There was a bank robbery that happened. Carjackings, when I knock doors, Palatine, Inverness, Hawthorne Woods, people are scared. A senior told me she can't even walk her dog at night anymore. We have to take crime seriously. We have to make sure that police officers are respected.
Thank you. Candidate Syed.
I will start off by saying that cash bail makes no sense because it allows for violent offenders to buy their way out of jail with no consideration for the threat that they pose to our communities. This cash bail puts us at risk, and I'm glad that we're done with that in the state of Illinois. And I don't know what statistic my opponent is citing, but Loyola did do a study and they found out that violent crime did not increase in Illinois. However, I will say, there's a very serious concern about burglaries and car theft here in the 51st District. And it's important that we give law enforcement the resources they need to trace these crimes back to the perpetrators and hold them accountable. And being the only candidate in this race endorsed by actual law enforcement and have a history of working with law enforcement on a bill that protects victims of crime, which is now passed into law, I know that we have cultivated the relationships and the care to address these issues that are impacting our residents.
Thank you. Next question. What should be done to ensure that renewable energy can be brought online as soon as possible without introducing environmental hazards? Should nuclear power and carbon sequestration be prioritized the same as other energy sources? Candidate Syed.
Yes, I was proud to vote yes on Senate Bill 1289, which would protect our air, water, and communities from the risks associated with each step of the carbon capture and sequestration process. And I will tell you, in Springfield, this was a big victory for us because we got environment groups involved, we got the manufacturing groups involved, people that are building these pipelines for carbon sequestration, and we've passed this historic legislation. I will also say I voted in favor of creating small nuclear modular reactors. But I'm also in favor, because I supported that bill because as a young person, I know we don't have time to waste. We need to make sure that we are exploring renewable energy sources at the highest capacity we can and transitioning away from fossil fuels. But I'm also in support of making sure that we have programs that review the safety of these small nuclear modular reactors, that assess whether or not they're getting the job done, whether or not they're effective, and if we need to make changes to our laws.
Thank you. Candidate for DK.
Yeah, thank
Your
you.
question.
Thank you. Renewable energy, like I mentioned earlier, when I finished grad school, I had the honor of working for General Electric, and it was gas turbines. And then I worked in nuclear energy in California. And one of the things we have to be is very, very careful with some of the safety and the issues that go on with some of these programs. Yes, it's important to move away and be very, very climate focused and climate conscious. There's a lot of studies that have been done that when you rush to bring some of these energies and some of these different options, there's a price that's paid by the consumers. There's also costs. So what I would do is have a bipartisan committee. Let's look at the costs. Let's look at all the options. We follow what has been passed, the law, but we also look at other alternatives, because a lot of times you're rushing and there's different consequences to every action.
Thank you. On which of your priorities would you be willing to make compromises in order to find common ground and gain support for bipartisan legislation? Candidate Ufor-DK?
Yes, so my priorities as state representative, I'll fight for lower taxes, quality education, improving our curriculum, and prioritize public safety. I work as a trustee now, and like I said, we don't look at Democrat, Republican, Independent. I just want to work hard for everybody in this district. I work well across the aisle, and I think compromise is one of the key things, strengths that you need to have when you're in office. It's not my way or the highway. You have to look at everything. We come to the table, we talk about the pros and cons, and we have an intelligent discussion. But the number one thing is the cost, lowering our costs and making the quality of living for every resident affordable. Too many people are leaving our state. Too many small businesses are closing because they can't make ends meet, they can't make payroll because of the burdensome regulations, the cost that's driving up businesses. So we have to make sure we're working together bipartisan, but we also have to do things that are common sense and practical.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Syed?
I would say any issue, I'd be willing to hear the other side, to listen to arguments, to see where we can find compromise. And I will say, every single bill I passed with bipartisan support. Not a single one of my bills did not have a Republican vote on it. And I'm proud of that, because I've done the outreach to work across the aisle to cultivate those relationships and have frankly made some great friends across the aisle. I will just give one example of my prescription drug affordability board legislation, which has been one of my bigger focuses for this legislative session. We spoke with all the stakeholders. We changed the legislation so that the Republican Party would have more of a say into who is appointed to this board. So not just in words am I saying I work across the aisle, but even in the text of my legislation, the amendments I made would give Republicans in our state more power to be part of this bipartisan process and work on behalf of Illinoisans. I will say that it's important that we stick to the intent of the legislation. We have to make sure that we are not compromising our values when we're doing this.
What legislation, if any, would you support affecting taxes on individuals, tax on tips, and tax on retirement income? Candidate Syed?
I would not support anything that taxes retirement income. I don't think we should ever be looking towards retirement income as a source for additional revenue. I think it's very egregious and disrespectful to seniors in our community who have lived in our communities, contributed, are now struggling with a significant property tax burden, and are relying solely on their retirement income on Social Security to make ends meet. I would also look towards repealing the tax on tips too. We're taxing people whose income, only a portion of their income is stable. The tips, they're not stable. They might get more tips one day, no tips the next day. I don't think it is appropriate that we should be stepping in and taxing tips as well for members, for many of our constituents who are in the service industry who are receiving those tips. So I don't know if that answers the question, but my answer to both would be no.
Thank you. Candidate Ufor-DK?
I'm against increasing taxes. As a small business owner, one of the things and one of the biggest issues is the taxes, the tax burden that's faced when you're a small business. I'm the only candidate up here that's been endorsed by the National Association of Small Businesses. My opponent got a 0% rating across the board. Taxes, again, we have to look at ways we can lower costs. So people want to stay in the state. When businesses stay in the state, they provide jobs. When they provide jobs, we get to spend money. And this economy 101, you spend money, it goes into the economy, and then you continue to thrive. Right now, taxes on tips is not the way to go, and taxes in general, we gotta look for ways that we can lower taxes, not increase them.
Thank you. Medicaid eligibility or benefits exceeding federally funded mandated criteria are wholly funded by the state of Illinois. What state criteria do you support for assessing this excess mandate? Candidate before DK.
Medicare, again, when you have a lot of mandates brought in from Springfield, it makes things difficult, but we have to look at the details. We have to understand what is involved in getting Medicare eligibility. And we have to understand that our seniors, a lot of times, benefit from these programs. And so we have to just look at the cost and make sure that we're having intelligent, common sense solutions and discussions about what the criteria would entail, how people benefit from it, and what ways that we can change if we need to.
Thank you. Candidate Syed.
Could you please repeat that question?
Certainly. Medicaid eligibility or benefits exceeding federally funded mandated criteria are wholly funded by the state of Illinois. What state criteria do you support for assessing this excess mandate?
Medicaid, I would say, I'll start off by saying this. I believe that healthcare is a human right. So I'll just put that out there. Medicaid is an instrumental program in the state of Illinois to make sure that people that are slipping through the cracks have access to healthcare. I got a call from a constituent that is on Medicaid, and the system is still failing her because there's not enough quick enough turnaround time for her to get her infusions. That she's been told to go back to Medicaid and renegotiate this and make sure she's able to qualify for another drug, which she doesn't qualify for. I will tell you that Medicaid, we should not be removing funding away from Medicaid because then we're removing away healthcare access. But as the government, what we have an obligation to do is if we're spending taxpayer dollars on Medicaid, making sure that Medicaid is the most efficient program. And Medicaid is providing the healthcare that they promise to residents and doing so with the quicker turnaround times so we can save lives and prevent illnesses.
Thank you. That was our final question. And now it's time to move on to the closing statements. Candidates will each have 1 minute, and this will begin with candidate Syed. 1 minute.
Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for this forum. It is such a privilege to work on behalf of the residents of the 51st District every single day. And over the past 3 years, I've knocked on a lot of doors. I've seen kids grow up a few inches. I've seen new parents and grandparents, and I've seen the concerns of community members evolve with the changes in their life. And I'm so grateful to be in a role where I get to meet and learn from so many people. And I'm proud of the work that we have done. I am proud to be a candidate who supports our first responders and educators, which is why I am the only candidate endorsed by actual law enforcement, firefighters, nurses, and by our educators. I have fought for seniors to make prescription drugs more affordable, and I'm working to expand the senior property tax freeze, which is why I received the Retiree Champion Award from the Illinois Association for Retired Americans. We have accomplished great things, but there is more work to do, and I would not be running for re-election if I didn't believe in the ability for Illinois to change and to be an even better state. That is why I'm running.
Thank you very much. Candidate before DK, 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum. I think it's been informative and educational, and I hope you learned something more about me. Thanks to the constituents for being here, and I look forward to serving you in Springfield. Again, I've been endorsed. I'm the only candidate that's been endorsed by every retired police officer and the local police officers in my village. Safe Suburbs USA, you can go. They're retired police officers. They endorse me. So again, there's a lot of mistruths. I'm going to be a voice for a working family because I am a working family. Our families pay taxes. We pay property taxes, small business taxes. I'm a parent. I have a child in the school system, and I care dearly what happens to all children. I will fight for change in Springfield. Right now, it's a one-party state. Everything that's talked about, the high taxes, the lowering the cost of living, the immigration crisis, the budget cliff, it's the same administration, and they had chances to change. They're controlled. So when I'm in office, I will work for you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Okay, thank you, candidates. I will now turn the microphone back over to Vicki.
As we bring this forum to a close, I want to thank the candidates for their participation. We all recognize the huge amount of time and energy that this takes, and you're a credit to your community, both of you ladies. Again, I want to thank all of you for your cooperation in removing hats and buttons and buttoning your shirts. Again, we try to keep this a neutral space, and thank you again for your help with that. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and the Barrington Area Library, thank you all for coming. Don't forget, there are several ways to cast your ballot, and there's still time to register to vote. There's plenty of information available on the League of Women Voters website. So please participate in our democracy by casting your ballot. Remember, your vote is your voice. And the library is closing at 9 o'clock, so they've asked us to take water bottles and joyful